Now to former Reagan Budget Director David Stockman, multiple best-selling author, on what he makes of this. Your concern is that whether spending it on programs or spending it on tax cuts, we're getting deeper in debt, right?
Well, that's true. 1.5 trillion they're going to add if they can hit their target. They're already at 2 trillion, and by the time all the bidding is over, in other words, you get rid of the loophole closers and you add more benefits to the middle class, which aren't in the current bill, we're going to be deep in red. And that is not a good thing to do.
We're already deep in
with
red,
20
right?
trillion of public debt and 30 trillion built in over the next decade before this. Now, my argument is this is an economic dud, it's a political landmine, and it's an ideological imposter parading as a Reagan-esque supply-side tax cut when it's nothing like that. It's a wish list of business in Wall Street. By definition, at the heart of supply side is marginal rate cuts. There are no marginal rate cuts in this. The top rate stays 39.6. There's a bubble rate that goes to 46%, above $1 million. Second, there's no individual cut in here. If you set aside the pass-through on business, right, which I have a different critique of, there's only $450 billion over 10 years of individual rate cuts. That's tiny. Individuals will pay $22 trillion over that period. This is 2.2%. It is.
You don't think it's enough to move the needle?
I don't think it'll move the needle. The third point I would make is this is not a middle-class tax cut either. If you take the heart of the middle class, which is adjusted gross income from $55,000 to $95,000, a third of them get a tax increase of $1,000 a year. Two-thirds get a decrease of $1,000.
You're averaging it out over the 10 years because the expiration of credits and stuff like that.
Well, the credits are, that's a gimmick, a short-term gimmick. If you look fully effective. So if you take the middle class as a whole, 30 million filers right in the center of the middle class, their average tax cut is $6 a week. 1 cappuccino, 2 cappuccinos, and a banana at Starbucks. That's all they're getting. All of this.
Starbucks sells bananas. But you raise a good. One of the things I said is the argument for this, and you and I have gotten into this before, David, is that something is better than nothing. I don't concur with that because I think that if you get something that feels like it's nothing, it's going to come back to haunt you at the polls. So I don't know if something is better than nothing. They might iron out some of these differences, but explain.
Yeah, I think it's worse because if you look at this, there are 4 big provisions that cost $2.7 trillion. They'll add to the debt. $200 billion of that is estate tax relief for 5,000 dead people a year. That's not going to help the economy that much, even if there is equity. $600 billion is for getting rid of the minimum tax. I pay it. I'm not going to do anything different except pay my tax accountant less. That won't accomplish anything. The other $2 trillion is for business cuts, and the thing we have to emphasize here is that workers don't pay the corporate tax rate or the business rate. Shareholders and owners do. So they're set by the world market. Wages are set by the world market. These corporate rates cuts, and it's $2 trillion, will go into share buybacks and dividends and other returns to capital.
So
now,
you have very little faith that they're going to plow this into plant equipment or hiring folks?
I think not at all, because number one...
But wouldn't sheer competitive instincts feed that they would almost, now after they've gotten their balance sheets in order, they would be compelled just to outbid for the other guy and the declining pool of talent that's available?
No, I don't think so. First of all, we've got the lowest cost of capital in recorded history because the Fed has put the interest rate at practically 0 for 10 years. So
but that's changing. It's inching up.
Inching up a little bit. But right now, there is no barrier to investment, equity, debt, capital, equipment, plant. It's all that can be done is being done. Tax rates aren't effective. Second, the reason corporations, the big caps, are going offshore is for lower labor costs. Let me give one example. IBM had 0 employees in India in 1993. It has 130,000 now. It had 150,000 domestic employees back then. It has 90,000 or fewer now. It went to India for much lower labor costs in the tech supporting industries, not because of tax rates. IBM's tax rate today is 11%. And if we lower
So the real thing that draws companies abroad isn't so much what the tax situation is, but what the labor situation
is.
Yeah, they can hire workers abroad for a lot less.
Yeah, much lower labor costs, the China price for goods, the India price for back office services.
But wouldn't a lower tax rate at least mitigate that differential?
No, I don't think it's going to change labor costs. If you want to be near...
No, but let's say labor costs are, everything is the same, but the tax difference was dramatically different. You don't think that would ease that up?
No, I don't, because it's not going to go into wages. It's going to go into dividends. It's going to go into stock buybacks. It's going to go into LBOs. It's going to go into levered recaps. That's why Wall Street is, foaming at the mouth for this. If the White House economist, who's nuts, who says it's going to be $4,000 a family and higher wages,
yeah, where did they come up with that number?
Wall Street would be booing day and night, because if you're going to have lower tax costs, higher wage costs, there's going to be no change in profits per share, and none of this, excitement on Wall Street.
We were going to eventually, you have argued for a long time, a day of reckoning about all this debt, the 20+ trillion. It could be, who knows, 30 trillion when all is said and done after a decade here. What are we looking at here? What would be the tipping point that would send the alarms?
I think the tipping point is around the corner. The Fed is normalizing. Rates are going to go up. 1 year from now, it will be selling $600 billion of government bonds a year, not buying, selling. That will cause.
But it's doing that on a rolling basis.
No, but the point is, for the last 10 years, it's been buying massively.
But hasn't this all been well trumpeted?
It doesn't matter if it's known. The market ignores everything that isn't happening this moment. But obviously, when all the central banks of the world began to shrink their balance sheets, the scale of supply and demand is going to change. Yields are going to go up. The stock market today is built on ultra-low yields. As yields go, junk bonds are already selling off. Share buybacks, which have been massive, $5 trillion in the last 10 years, have been heavily supported by borrowing. If the borrowing stops, the whole game is going to begin to reverse. So I think we're on the cusp right now. And therefore, if we do get another recession, which has to happen between now and 2027, otherwise you would have 207 months without a recession, which is double the longest expansion in history. If we have another recession, which we will, I don't know if it's 2020, 2023, we're going to have 35 trillion of public debt built in before they fiddle around with a tax cut that is wasted. If you want to do a tax cut, cut the payroll tax for 100. I say it over.
Where do you put your money, Dave?
I could say under a mattress, but I would say keep it out of the casino. This stock market is so egregiously overvalued, anticipating.
But you were saying that thousands of points ago.
Yeah, of course, and I was saying that in '99 and 2000, and I was saying it in 2007 and 2008.
But where do you put your money?
I think right now the issue is safety, it's capital preservation, stay in cash, stay short.
What about gold? What about
I think gold is a wonderful thing. And don't ask me about Bitcoin, because I have no idea. It looks to me like a speculative bubble, of all bubbles.
All right, but people are talking about tangible assets, that sort of thing. That's a fallback if you buy it. I talked to Robert Prechter, Peter Eliades, big bears who who said that the charts are looking grim. Now, they base that on different charts, I guess. But the market has steadily climbed this wall of worry. What makes it climb this wall of worry?
It climbs this wall of worry because it believes that the Fed is there to backstop the market, and no matter what happens in the world, the Fed will come to the rescue. I think they're dead wrong. The Fed's out of dry powder. They're practically.
But the Fed can make powder, can it?
I doubt whether after $4.5 trillion of balance sheet, it can go into another trillion or 2 trillion or 3 trillion buy, because if it does that, it'll mean that the whole thing is failing. I think that will create panic. Sure.
When you worked with Ronald Reagan, he rarely talked about the stock market, even when it was climbing, and it came in handy in '87 with the crash because he still refused to talk much about it. This president doesn't stop talking about it. What do you think of that? And is it wise for a president, to marry himself, as this one has, to the markets? They've been good markets. They've had a good run up. But what do you think?
I think it's the dumbest mistake that any president has made in a long time. He should have gone in and said this was a huge, ugly, big bubble, whatever he said during the campaign. It is.
And you liked that at the time.
Yeah, but he should have said the Fed is behind this. We're going to have fundamental change. Janet Yellen, you're out. He put somebody in there that believes in sound money. This guy that they put in now, Powell, he's Janet Yellen with a tie and trousers. You know, so the point is he should have punctured the bubble, blamed it on Obama, blamed it on the prior swamp in Washington.
But he didn't do that.
He didn't do it. He took
So what
credit.
happens?
This is pure speculation. In other words, speculators will keep buying until they finally hit something that black swan and orange swan or red swan. I think China's the red swan. You know, the reason the world economy bounced a little bit is that in the run-up to the 19th Party Congress, which was really the coronation of
That
Mr.
was weird.
Xi,
Yeah.
they opened up the spigots of credit expansion like never before. That credit impulse spread to the whole world economy. There was a lift to commodities, industrial
And look at their
production.
interest rates now. Yeah.
Yeah, but also look what they reported 2 nights ago. In October already, they've begun to reverse direction. In other words, the Party Congress is over. Xi has become the greatest dictator since Mao. And now he realizes he's got a 40 trillion bubble on his hands. And if he doesn't rein it in, the whole thing.
Yeah, I think the Financial Times says the Party Congress is over, and so is the party.
So, yes, exactly what people need to understand. And when China starts to unravel and the world economy slows down and all of this ridiculous, hockey stick forecasting of earnings that's coming out of Wall Street now changes, the market is going to correct big time. Now, remember, in this quarter, earnings allegedly were good. Do you know that earnings in this quarter, honest earnings GAAP, were $106 a share, $106 per S&P 500 share, the same as it was 3 years ago in September 2014. So we have been going nowhere, just up and down.
How are you basing the real earnings? Because I thought they were up 9% from
That's from last year, but they went into this big valley.
So
in other words,
even that isn't
the
good.
pig was going through the python because of deflation, commodity inflation. But when you go nowhere in 3 years, and then you're looking at the red Ponzi beginning to unravel, you want to pay 25 times earnings like they're paying right now? I don't.
You must be a blast at Thanksgiving at the table, right? You just avoid these subjects?
Well, we get the turkey once a year.
Okay.
I think this turkey is about ready to...
Oh, I see. We're all stuffed.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very, very much, David Stockman. Whether you agree or disagree, just remember the historical perspective, where he's been, what he's seen, what he's done. It's all out there. A little more after this.